Hello and welcome to City Beat. I'm your host Greg from the Lewiston City Library. Joining me today is Steve Thomas, Executive Director of Family Promise Lewis Clark Valley. I apologize.
No problem.
Welcome to the show. It's great
Thanks.
to have you on today.
Good to be here.
Great. So how long have you been involved with Family Promise here in the Valley?
Actually, I've been involved with Family Promise since Family Promise began in the Valley. It's like 11 years ago. We started thinking about developing Family Promise, and I was a part of the initial group that helped bring it to the Valley.
Oh, very cool. So what exactly is Family Promise for those viewers who might be unfamiliar?
Sure. Family Promise is a national organization, started out in Summit, New Jersey, about 25 years ago. A lady in the community there recognized that the homeless population in their area, if there was a family that was homeless, women went to a women's shelter and men's went to a men's shelter, and children often went with the women, and so families that were homeless couldn't stay together. They were always separated. And she thought that families would do better if they stayed together, and that maybe faith-based organizations could be a part of an answer to that problem. And so she developed this program. It sort of just took off, and now there's 182 affiliates around the country, of which we are one. And our goal is to take homeless families that are on the street and move them from the homeless population into permanent housing.
Oh, that's great. And how successful are you at meeting that goal currently?
That's been the amazing part. What we do is we take families that come to us most of the time living on the street or living in a camper or tenting or something like that, and they have no permanent home situation. They move in with us, work with our social worker, develop what we call a case plan, which is a plan of how they're going to move out of homelessness into permanent housing. And usually that's finding jobs, finding affordable housing, getting connected to services in the community that can assist them. And then over the course of a 2-month period, typically, that guest will solve a bunch of those issues, get a job, save some money for the first month's rent and damage deposit, and move into an apartment. And right now, nationally, Family Promise boasts that 85% of our guests move out into permanent housing and do it in less than 60 days. Lewiston, our success rate's just a little better than that. We're a little bit higher, like closer to 90% of our guests move into permanent housing. And I think our average last year was 67 days in the program, so typically a couple of months. And so that's part of the reason Family Promise is growing so much around the country, is the success rate is so huge.
Yeah, that's incredible, really, to be able to turn around that quickly. It's
pretty
not
rare.
An easy thing to do.
Part of it is, we work with a pretty small group. We only do 3 families at a time, and so they get a lot of one-on-one attention from our social worker. And our goal, of course, is to get them into permanent housing that they can sustain and stay, so they're kind of out of the homeless population forever. And so the hope is that, the kind of expenses that impact the taxpayer are eliminated by moving these families into permanent housing, and they get regular jobs, become a regular part of the community.
That's fantastic. And you mentioned, it was kind of started partnering with faith-based organizations. And how many faith-based organizations do you currently partner with here?
We have about 23 different churches here in the Valley that participate with us. There's actually a little more than that support us financially, but maybe they're not a host congregation or a team congregation. What the churches do for us is they provide the very expensive part of our program, which is lodging and meals. If we had to pay for what the churches do for us, it would add another $300,000 a year to our budget. But they provide all the lodging and all the meals for our guests. And the guests stay a week at a time at a church, and then they rotate to the next church. We have 9 host congregations. And so they go week to week at a new church, and they get a home-cooked meal at the dinner time at the church. And then the church also provides all their food for breakfast and lunch, and they make those meals there at the day center where my office is.
Oh, that's great. So being affiliated with so many faith-based organizations, do you make your guests go to church?
No, we like to look at it as though we're just having friends over. Guests that come and stay at the churches, they're just welcome to come and be there. We try to love on them, support them, help them out with the kids and all that kind of stuff. And there's no expectations. In fact, we kind of go a little bit more the other way, try to just help them feel welcome. Of course, if they ask about our churches, we'll tell them about what's going on, but we don't push anything on them. If they ask about an event we're doing, we might invite them to that event. But again, the focus is on loving and supporting them and helping them make a transition from the homeless population into permanent housing.
All right, and can any church be part of the program?
You bet. There's about 60 churches in the valley, and we need more churches to be involved. We'd love to get to the place where we have 12 host congregations, so each church is only hosting about 4 times a year. And then our team congregations, they just partner with the host church and help provide the volunteers. Because we use 3 teams of volunteers each night when the guests are there at the church. And so if you do the math, it takes about 50 volunteers a week to host these families for a week at a time. So we end up with an army of about 300 volunteers, and it's a great team, but of course the bigger the team is, the more you spread the load, and so nobody's working too hard.
Well, that sounds fantastic. How is this program funded? I mean, it sounds like heavily relied on volunteers, which is fantastic.
Yeah. That's pretty much, it's a local program run by the local community. It's basically a community answer to the homeless problem, and it's provided, or it's made possible by these faith-based organizations that are willing to partner with us, and then just the giving of individuals, churches, and businesses. Our budget's only about $140,000 a year, but it's all provided by local giving. We don't get any government grants or things like that. It's all local money helping local people. We only help families, obviously, that are right here in the community. And so when you support Family Promise, you're helping families right here in the valley get into permanent housing.
And that sounds just amazing, really, and what a feeling of joy when you get folks.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And
We just put a couple of families in homes just in the last month, and I think the average guest in our program's a single mom with children under the age of 10. And for many of these moms, just having somebody that expresses concern for them, showing them value, can really transform their attitudes about themselves, and in doing that, motivate them to get the jobs they need, get the help they need so they can support their families. So then when you move them into that apartment after they've been with us for a couple of months and maybe been on the street for 6 months or longer, it's an amazing experience. Kids get so excited, and of course, mom's thrilled to have a safe, warm place for her kids to be, not have to worry about their safety and that kind of stuff. And really for us, it's all about the kids. Typically when people think of homeless people, you think of the guy that's standing on the street corner, and it's really that hidden population of women and children that we work with. And there's just lots of kids that are through no fault of their own, are on the street.
Yeah, and it's great to be able to have so many people from so many different areas helping out with the program as well, not just one source. And it's great, it's all local and valley. Yeah. And you mentioned you've been working with this for about 8 years now. And what are some of the biggest challenges that you face?
Well, we started, like you say, about 8 years ago, and over the course of that time, I think our biggest challenge is, number one, just getting the word out. There's still people in the valley that don't even know we exist. And one of the challenges to that is how we operate. That is, the day center where our families live is just a house in a neighborhood. There's no signs on it. We want the families to fit into the neighborhood and feel comfortable. We have a van that we take our guests from the day center to the churches, and we help pick up kids from school and take people to work and stuff. We don't put our name all over the van, again, because we want to be sensitive to those children who are being taken to school. We want them to feel normal and fit in. And so it's a little hard to keep our name out there. And so that's one of the things we love it when people tell our story. And so we try to share our story as much as possible, get the word out. Then we get greater support. We get more churches involved. And the people that need the help of Family Promise learn about us. Most of our referrals come from other agencies in the valley and from the school districts and places like that. And I probably get 5 to 8 calls from families a week looking for places. And the other big challenge for us is, like I mentioned earlier, is continuing to expand our base of supportive churches. It's a lot of work for churches. It's a lot of effort on volunteers, and most all of our churches started at the very beginning and have been doing it for 8 years straight, and that's pretty taxing. And so if we can build that base, take a little of the pressure off those churches, would be great. I'd love, like I mentioned earlier, I'd love to have 12 host congregations and some of those kinds of things. Other challenges, obviously nonprofit funding is always an issue, but the Valley's been really generous. We have not been in situations where we haven't been able to pay our bills. Since I've been the director, which is I'm going on about 4.5 years, we've always been able to pay all our people and pay all our bills and keep the doors open, which is a real blessing.
Oh, absolutely. And with that, conversely from challenges, what's new and upcoming with the programs?
Well, to combat one of those issues, like I mentioned, our name isn't out there very much. I'm kind of a car nut, and I went out and bought an old truck, and I'm going to kind of paint it up like a shop truck and put our name all over it. It has a flatbed on it. We're going to use it to haul our family's furniture when they're moving into apartments. Part of the reason of having that is just to have something out there with our name on it as advertisement. And we're very excited about the fact that we just were awarded a community block grant to buy a duplex that we can use for transitional housing. Our plan is we want to have an opportunity for families to learn how to take care of an apartment, learn how to work with a landlord, be faithful in their rent, so that when they get these places they can stay in them and they can have a good reputation with the landlord. And so our hope is that once we buy this duplex, families that are in our program, once they kind of get some money saved up, they can move into that duplex, pay rent to us that we just put in savings so that they can use on their regular apartment, and spend a couple of months in our sort of practice apartment, and we help them learn some of those skills so that after a few months they can move into a regular apartment. They've got their money saved up. The theory is if we move people out of our program a little quicker into this apartment, we can help more families in a given calendar year. And of course that's always the goal, is help as many families as possible. So those are two of the most exciting things happening right now. The other things that we're working on is just new ways to share and express the need in the Valley. Lots of people still don't think we have a homeless problem. And so trying to make people aware of that is always a challenge. So we're always trying to come up with new ways to make the community more aware of what's happening in the Valley. You've probably remember or seen our Cardboard Box City events. We did that for a lot of years. We're going to bring back some new events, hopefully in the next couple of years, that will be maybe a little different than Cardboard Box City, but will continue to help people be aware that there's some issues there that we can be a part of the answer or the solution to their problem.
Absolutely. And doing so many exciting, great things, how can people get involved with your program and help out? What can people do?
Sure. There's lots of different ways. Obviously, you can be a part of a church that helps and volunteer. You can always give money. But in addition to that, we have just recently, through a generous donation of a couple of people and the nuns at St. Gertrude's in Cottonwood, we were able to purchase a storage shed. And so now that we can accept beds and dressers, which are two of the hardest things for guests to find when they're ready to move into apartments. Most of these families have nothing in terms of furniture when they're ready to move in. And so we also take things like kitchen items, towels, blankets, all that kind of small stuff that families need when they're moving into apartments. And so we're always ready to accept donations like that. And then also at the day center, in order to conserve the limited resources we have, we try to accept donations of diapers, toilet paper, paper towels, personal care items, shampoo, razors. We provide all that for our guests, all those personal care items. So as much of that as we can get donated, and we don't have to pay for it. And we get a lot of that donated now, but we continue to need those kinds of things. And also, like I mentioned earlier, the other way that you can really help us out is by sharing our story. Telling people about us, telling people that you support us, and explaining to them why, and encouraging them to join us and help out.
Great. And how do people contact you?
Well, easiest way is to connect with our Facebook page or our website. You can call us direct at the office. Our 208-798-3349 number takes you to my office and also connects you with our social worker. If you want to see what's going on, or maybe you are a part of a group and you'd like that group to know more about Family Promise, I'm always eager to come and share. We have a video that tells our story, and I love to get out and show that video and tell people about what's going on with Family Promise.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Steve.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Absolutely, anytime. On behalf of our guest, Steve Thomas, the Executive Director from Family Promise, and myself and everyone else here, we hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time on City Beat.